Professor Heidi Wheeler?
I do. Hello, all.
Oh, nice. Thanks so much for turning out.
Hi, Serena.
Of course. The German department has a special part in my heart, so.
Good. We're glad to hear that. And Patrick, just a real quick question as we get going. Can we download the participant list?
After the session.
Good.
Once you close the session, you can download it and it'll show you how long everybody was on and what their email addresses are.
Excellent. So we might want to wait just a moment to make sure our honored guests are here. Carolyn is there. Hi, Carolyn.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi.
Nice to see you.
We could go around and introduce ourselves maybe very briefly while we're waiting to see if Bridget and Audrey make it.
I'm hitting admit each time. I guess I could have changed that where I didn't have to admit everyone, but I have it set up for security, I guess. So my name's Debra Mifflin. I'm the German language program director, and I work with the director of undergraduate studies and the other people in the department. And that when we're co-organizing this workshop together with Life Design.
My name is Rochelle Tobias. I'm a professor of German. I hope I will see all of you at some point in your time at Johns Hopkins. I teach literature and thought courses, and I also run the Max Kade Center for Modern German Thought.
And I'm Heidi Wheeler. I coordinate the intermediate language program in German, and I also teach an advanced level, a graduate level translation course. But I've been trying to pull together information regarding funding for internships this semester. So that's what I'm here to share with you today.
My name is Patrick Brew. I'm the life design educator for student athletes at Johns Hopkins University. I have my PhD in German literature and research 16th and 17th century history and culture of Germany.
Hi, I'm Sarina Wesley. I am currently a master's student here at Hopkins. I did a 5th year here. I'm doing my master's in biochemistry, and I was one of the recipients of the Max Kade grant, and I used it to pursue an internship at a biochemical lab in Germany at the Ludwigs-Maximilian-Universität.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caroline West. I graduated from Hopkins a semester early in December 2019 with a bachelor's in sociology and international studies. I was also a recipient of the Max Kade grant for summer 2019, and I used the grant to fund research, actually not an internship, but I used it to fund research in Berlin. I was focusing on the cultural and social integration of refugees. So happy to be here.
And we're going to give, for the students who were recipients, more time to actually get into the details of their work in Germany.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen. We have a little presentation, and whoops, we start at the beginning.
Hi. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I'm sorry. We're having some trouble getting in the two presenters. I just sent Debra an email. They say they're being asked for a password.
Yeah, there's a password. I had to go look on the Handshake, and then there's a password on Handshake. So The password is 017000.
Well, could you
So I
repeat
think,
that?
yeah, it's 017000.
017000. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
No problem.
Okay. Well, let me move on to the agenda anyway, while we're getting a couple of more people in. This is what we're doing this hour. We'll hear from Professor Tobias first, and then Bridget will talk a little about the Kade travel fellowships to Germany and give you a list of the students who have used those over the last 4 years. And then we'll hear from, Audrey must be the one trying to get in, right? And then Serena and Caroline. And we'll finish up by looking at the JHU funding resources and the DAAD RISE program, and we'll remain to answer your questions.
I
So,
can't,
can you see
Okay,
this?
let me thank.
I cannot see the screen where I was admitting people anymore. So I hope, oh, there we go. Bridget's here. I got her.
Great, and Audrey should be trying to get in soon too.
And there's Audrey. Okay, great.
Fantastic. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I know that we are just beginning the finals period and you have a lot on the agenda. This year, unfortunately, we were not able to move forward with the grants that we have to send students traveling abroad because of the university's decision that non-essential travel should not be happening. But we want to begin preparing now for next year. There are a number of different funding opportunities, and there are a number of different ways to organize research stays, internships, or even German language courses in Germany. And we just want to give you a brief overview of all of these options today. I'm going to turn off my mic and immediately switch to our first presenter, Bridget Chen, who graduated Johns Hopkins in December 2019 with a double major in neuroscience and in German. She interned in 2018 at the German Cancer Research Foundation, and we'll tell you a little bit about that experience. Bridget is also currently working in a laboratory and has a lab meeting today at 6:30, so she can't stay very long. So without further ado, then let me first let Bridget tell you a little bit about her experience, and then we'll go over some funding opportunities, and you can hear from some of the other students who did internships in Germany. We're hoping to keep the meeting down to 1 hour.
Great. Hi, everyone. So my name is Bridget, as Professor Tobias introduced me. Thank you very much. And so, yes, I did my internship sort of 2 summers back, so the summer between my sophomore and junior year. And that opportunity was sort of very valuable for me because, as mentioned, I'm a neuroscience and German double major. And so I was looking for the opportunity to combine the two and find a way to uniquely utilize my German skills in a scientific context. And that's a skill set that I hadn't developed yet. I had very much conversational German, and my using German was very much something that would just only be in recreational contexts. And so I had a lot of fun looking into this opportunity. And so I used to live in Germany for 3 years in my high school years, and that was also a good connection for me to follow. I had a few friends back in Germany. One of them goes to a medical school at Heidelberg University, and so I reached out to that friend, and we've been connected, and he connected me to a professor at the Heidelberg University Cancer Research Center, and that's how I got started with doing research. And so some of you who may be interested in possibly doing research, specifically scientific research abroad in Germany, fear not that you have to have some sort of friend connection from high school. You don't need that. Honestly, it was as easy as just sending an email to the PI, and really they knew me through familiar, oh, you know my friend. But honestly, if you just expressed your interest through an email, just like how you would email a professor here at Hopkins, to express interest in doing their research, it would be very similar. And also being persistent. And so I sent several emails because these people are very busy. And so they finally reached out back. And because you're coming in with your own funding, if you end up getting this fellowship, you are coming in with your own funding. It's not like you're expecting them to pay you for the work that you're doing. So it's definitely very possible. And so that's how I got started with that internship. And overall, the internship was very good. It was 5 weeks long. And I was able to learn how to do in vitro patch clamp electrophysiology, which was a very, I would say, coveted and difficult technique in neuroscience. And it was very interesting. And overall, how that shaped my course in undergrad in terms of like what I want to pursue in the future is it definitely helped because I want to pursue an MD PhD in the future. I'm currently applying this cycle. And it's definitely something I can put down on my sort of list of skill sets is that I know how to do whole cell in vitro patch clamp electrophysiology. Yeah, so, and if I would recommend doing an internship abroad, I absolutely would. It was in Germany, if you've never been, it's very independent. You're very much able to just like pick your own agenda. You take the train, it's very independent. You don't have to worry about, the safety is also really good. And yeah, it's just like you kind of sort of pick your own adventure. Was there anything else you wanted me to add, or if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take any.
Oh yeah, I wanted to be able to clap, but Heidi did that first and I'm never as good at getting, so I'll give you a thumbs up.
Thank you.
Others, if you want to ask Bridget questions, she's going to have to leave this meeting in 8 minutes. So now would be your opportunity. But I think one thing I would like to maybe ask is, did you stay in touch with the lab where you interned after you returned to the US?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of every now and then like stay connected with the mentors that I worked with. So the PI, her name is Dr. Hannah Monnier. She's really busy and like I respect her busyness. But I've always been connected with the lab mentors that I had. So just like if people on this call are also undergraduate research assistants, you know that you're not directly working with a PI. Often you're working with a graduate student or a postdoctoral fellow or even a medical student. So I had mentors like that and I'm still connected with them. And some of them even visited the US to do their research abroad experience. So it's very much a nice exchange, and you can serve as sort of like after you go and do this exchange, you can serve as a network for them to help them expand their research network into the US. I see a few questions actually.
So one of the questions that has come up a couple times in the chat is what was your experience in terms of having to use German?
Yeah, so what's also really cool about research in general, and I think this counts for beyond scientific research, but also like humanities research probably too, definitely for sure for science research, is everything is done in English. And so when I arrived, I was a little bit shocked. I was like, no, I want to practice my German. So the lab was like, that's okay. We will do everything in German when we're working with you. But like lab meetings and most other sort of things that go on between other folks, it's all in English actually, because all the papers that are published internationally are all in English. And so it's sort of to your disadvantage to stick to your native language in that country. So you know that you can rely on not being miscommunicated by being like, okay, well, if I have a word that I don't know, I'll use it English temporarily. But my lab worked really hard on trying to make sure that I utilize my German as much as possible because they knew that that was my intention when I joined the lab. So no, you do not need to be proficient, and most Germans actually learn English growing up throughout middle school and high school, and their English is like incredibly accurate.
Would you say though that it was helpful to know German, to spend 5 weeks in Germany?
Yes, absolutely. It was very much useful because still, like maybe in the lab, you are able to rely on English if you absolutely need to, but you'll still be able to comfortably try and practice and expand on your German. But then like outside of that context, then you need to go grocery shopping or like you need to buy a train ticket. You have to use all your German. Sure, they might be able to speak some English, but ideally you want to just walk in and act like you're a German speaker and go from there. And that's one of the most incredible feelings, is being able to just be like, and I'm German, until you start to doubt me.
I have a feeling we're going to get into this a little bit more as the meeting progresses, but I thought it'd be worth asking, did you have to look for housing? Was that difficult to find? Was it, again, that's something that you could do both in English or in German?
Yeah, so I think other people on this call might be able to answer this question better. I was very lucky to be able to stay with my friend who I was connected with since high school. So but I envision that if I didn't have a friend to like rely on and live with, it would have been, I would look for like a Jugendherberge, which like is a youth hostel. And I've lived in several of them, like when I went on school trips back in the days when I used to live in Germany, and they're quite affordable. And usually, I mean, you're living with other youth who are also doing some sort of abroad experience or doing some sort of travel throughout Europe. And so I think that's it's very viable as a way for housing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the group here?
Hi, Bridget. My name is Yanni, and I'm also a neuroscience and hopefully German double major. Mm-hmm. So I actually asked about, personally, I asked my lab here on campus whether it would be a good opportunity for me to do research abroad, and then they kind of suggested against it because they brought up the thing that, like, you know, you don't really spend that much time there, and then like you don't get like that good of a connection as you would for research here. So I was wondering how that, I guess, was a good thing for you in your example.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. I actually, my neuroscience advisor, before I went on this trip, I'd already gotten the fellowship, and my neuroscience advisor, who I don't want to name any names, but I'm not very fond of that person. But he sort of opposed my trip abroad. And I was like, I want to uniquely focus on trying to combine my interests in neuroscience and German. And so really, like, Yanni, if this is something that's personal to you and you want to expand on your German, your scientific German, or you have other personal motivations to go abroad, and you want to do that sort of combination, go for it. And even if other people sort of might be like, this might not be the most productive thing to do for your career, it's just one summer. And it's like, if you utilize, you could have also stayed at home all summer, and that won't be your detriment. Like, it really, and so I guess long story short is that, like, it might not be necessarily productive for your career in the future, but you can figure something out with the lab that you connect with over there. So, for example, I was only able to stay for 5 weeks. I would have stayed longer if I could, but financial restrictions. And so I was only able to sustain living there for 5 weeks. And then with that, I worked with the lab, and they said, okay, well, you can't really necessarily do a project, or you could do like a small project, but you could do it connected to a mentor. And the most important thing, though, is that we want to make sure you will leave this lab with a concrete skill, and that's patch clamp electrophysiology, which is, I'd like to emphasize, a very difficult technique. And it took me 3 weeks to master. And then the last 2 weeks, I really finalized it. So yeah, that's something that I'll be able to take with me into the future.
Great. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's awfully kind of you, Bridget, to Zoom in when you have to go to a second meeting this evening. I'm grateful to you for sharing your experiences, and we will certainly contact you in the future should we do these forums again. Thank you so much.
No problem. And if anybody has any questions that they weren't able to ask, I'm an email away. I'm sure that all the people who've been facilitating and hosting this call today, from Mifflin, Professor Tobias, like, you can always share my information. I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks, Bridget. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Take care.
So as Bridget mentioned, we offer travel grants through the German program every year. We have a total of 10 Max Kade travel grants every summer. They don't cover your entire stay in Germany, but they provide some financial reward, $1,200. We always plead with the foundation to raise the amount, and perhaps one day we will be successful at that. I wanted to say maybe just briefly in passing that one of the reasons it is so easy to contact a German lab or a German company and ask about an internship is that in Germany, most people are still required in any profession to do an internship. It's a cultural form that they are very familiar with. You usually have to go through some kind of training program as part of your entry into any kind of profession. And for that reason, it doesn't strike German companies or German labs as out of the ordinary for people to approach them directly to ask about internship possibilities. And especially since you may not be asking for funding from them, that makes it even more likely. It's just a very accepted cultural form. And so it's something that you shouldn't hesitate to do. You should, though, obviously also talk to your mentors at Johns Hopkins about whether they have research partners at either private companies or, again, public laboratories, university facilities, museums, and the like, to see if there's not some way that they might be able to help connect you with another person. But as Bridget said, the most important thing is to be persistent, because internships do exist there as a possibility. We launched the Max Kade Travel Fellowship Program only a few years ago, and I just wanted to go through what some of the students have done on their Max Kade fellowships. And so you can see how varied the experience has been. John Frye was an international studies major, worked and helped redesign actually some of the software for a medical device company called Q3. Sophia Haas, who majors in civil engineering, worked at the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems in Stuttgart. You can see that we covered the entire map of Germany with these programs. Winona Liao is a performance student at the Peabody, and she went to and performed at the Euro Music Festival in Halle. You'll be hearing from Caroline West later today, so I am not going to take away anything from her presentation now. In 2018, we also funded 3 students. You'll be hearing from Audrey Adams, who was a German and International Studies major and did an internship. She'll tell you about that. Bridget, you just met, and Serena, you will meet later on. So perhaps we can jump to 2017. In 2016 and 2017. This year actually pleases me a lot, because you'll see that we had people who worked in a variety of different areas, from a microbiology lab at a university to a research project at the Deutsche Kinemathek. That's a German museum devoted to cinema and to television. And Lily McCarthy did an internship at the Leibniz Institute for Economic Research in Munich. So as you can see, you don't only have to be a natural scientist to do an internship or a research project in Germany. You can be a humanist. You could be somebody who's interested in economic policy in any other area, and also do internships. And finally, Kasturi Nair did an internship at the Institute for Molecular Medicine in Düsseldorf, Germany. We are here to, there's a question. What are FLI students?
That was from a chat that Patrick Brew put up, and I think he'll answer it. Yeah. Oh, first.
Apology. Thank you. So there are a number of different kinds of internships you can do. You should not hesitate to reach out to us to help you maybe target cultural institutions or various Max Planck institutes, to think about places that might actually be somehow aligned with your interests. We have, unfortunately, only 10 fellowships, so they are competitive. And our priority is given first and foremost then to students who have studied German at Johns Hopkins, though German language is not a prerequisite for doing any kind of internship in Germany. Sometimes it's the internship first in Germany that will propel you to take a German language course. There are many ways in which you can obviously continue your working life in Germany without knowing much German, but to interact socially, to go to a bar, to watch a soccer game together with other people, often it helps to have some cultural fluency and some linguistic capacity. Now, we have 4 wonderful students. You've heard from Bridget. Our next presenter here today is Audrey Adams, who graduated in 2018 with a German and IS major. And she has actually interesting plans for the future she can tell you about too, since I don't, and her job even in the present, which is not unrelated to her 2018 internship at the Potsdam Chamber of Commerce. So Audrey Adams, it's great to see you back. I think I'll see you shortly. And please let us know about your internship.
Yeah, of course. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you,
Great.
Audrey.
Awesome. Sometimes the speaker on this computer fails me a little. Yeah, so my name is Audrey. I graduated in 2018 with a German and International Studies major. In 2018, I also went to, well, really Potsdam, Germany, but I lived in Berlin to intern for the Potsdam Chamber of Commerce. What I did there, I basically, so the project that they had brought me on to work on actually ended up getting canceled just before I came. So that was a small, minor hiccup. And so at that point, it became a little bit more improvised. Sorry, I was a long day at work. So at that point, it did become a little bit more improvised. I still got to go to a lot of the conferences they had planned for me to go to. I got to see Günther Oettinger, who is a sort of EU official, speak in person, which is really cool. He was a month off of one of his many controversies, so that was really, really a good opportunity to see him. And so I ended up going to various conferences, and I got to see Babelsberg, which is a famous film studio and film area that's sort of just outside of Potsdam, which I hadn't even totally been aware of. And I also helped out with some of the paperwork, with translations for memorandums of understanding that they were sending back and forth with actually a Chinese delegation. For some reason, those had to be partially in English. And I generally just got a really diverse experience, I think, mostly because of the fact that the project I'd been brought on to work on ended up being canceled. It offered me a little bit more flexibility, so I got to go travel and see a friend of mine who was living in, who was in Copenhagen at the time. And I also had a really interesting opportunity because now I work at the Federal Trade Commission here in Washington, D.C. And at the time when I got the internship, I knew I was going to go into that job afterwards. And this was in the time where the EU privacy rules had just started to roll out, GDPR. And so I got my introduction to privacy, which my agency deals with fairly often and sort of as an enforcer in the US. I got my introduction to privacy from the company that I was actually working for. They ran me through all of the rules and regulations, and I got to experience what it sort of what Germans or how Germans hear about GDPR before I really heard it from the US side, which I think has made me a lot smarter about privacy and gave me a much better understanding than I think unfortunately a lot of people have in the US. So yeah, it ended up being a really great opportunity. It was a little bit unexpected how it turned out with the project getting canceled. But, you know, I got to live in Berlin, I saw Potsdam, I saw Babelsberg, I traveled, I went to these conferences. There was another intern there who's actually from China. That was an interesting connection to make. And I learned a lot about privacy. So is there anything else that I should cover? Any questions?
Audrey, were you, did you get help with your housing or did you have to find that on your own?
So I went through FU to set up or Frye University to set up the internship. So they had so I went through their program and they helped me find the position. And then through them, I could have either stayed with the host family, which I actually think would have been a better decision. I opted against it. Don't really recall why, but honestly, I absolutely should have gone for it. And then I ended up looking for housing, and with Berlin being how it is, got a pretty decent deal on an Airbnb in Mitte. But they were very, very helpful.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then your internship was organized through the FU Berlin, of the Free University Berlin.
Yes.
Okay. Have you been in touch with any of the people you worked with since you left? I mean, obviously the internship was connected to your job at the Federal Trade Commission in terms of just and the general area of policy.
Yeah. So I'm sometimes in touch with the person who is mainly in charge of me, a very nice man called Mark Runner. He is extremely sociable and he has better English than I do, which makes me very jealous. So we keep in touch a little bit over LinkedIn. You know, we like each other's shares and occasionally send messages. He's a very friendly person. He keeps promising me the next time he's in the US, he'll shoot me a message and we'll set something up. Unfortunately, everybody's not likely to travel for a while. But no, so we've kept in touch, and even the other people who weren't directly in charge of me, if I were to encounter them in some other context or I had something going on that I thought they might be interested in or helpful for, I would feel very comfortable reaching out and talking to them, even though it's been some time.
I don't want to put you in an embarrassing spot, but no, it's nothing. It's not. But your summer internship sounds like it was very much at the interface of law and economic policy, and how the two converge. Has that actually affected your future career plans?
Yeah, I mean, so right now I just went through my law school application cycle, and I'm going to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, which I'm very thrilled about. And I do think it helped me with that, and it helped my thinking on it, because I would have, I think, previously said that I wasn't so sure what the whole thing with privacy was about, which is kind of sad to admit, but it seemed very above my head, and there's all these different terms, and I just couldn't kind of get my head around it. And then when I was actually there that summer, it was such a topic of conversation, and Germans love to tell their opinions. They love it, or at least most of the ones that I've encountered. And so I got to have all these substantive conversations with people who were in these different positions in the Chamber of Commerce, and get to see how they thought about it. They were mostly at the time concerned with implementing things, which is kind of one of those hard things about governance. You know, legislation passes and then it's left up to people to figure out what the appropriate way to handle it is, which is also largely what my job is about. So it really awakened like an interest in privacy, and also in the fact that, you know, you pass laws and then people have to implement them, and your bureaucracy has to implement them, and what are effective ways of communicating that, and how can you sort of, you know, there have to be penalties, but there also has to be an adaptation time. And so it was very interesting and very relevant in that sense.
Great. Do you mind hanging around till the end of the meeting, because questions may come up afterwards? I think we should probably go ahead. We have two more presenters and a little bit more information to present, but then we wanted to open the floor. So if you don't mind sticking around, that would be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think the next speaker is Sarina Wesley. She graduated in 2019. I'll let her talk about her background. She majored in chemistry and is currently pursuing a graduate degree in chemistry, I think, at Johns Hopkins. And don't forget to discuss your wonderful language skills as well, Sarina.
Hi, everyone. So my story is pretty similar to Bridget's with a little bit of twists. So I was a chemistry major here at Hopkins, and When I was a sophomore, I had joined a lab, and I realized that I really loved doing laboratory work and doing organic synthesis. And so, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about the idea of pursuing my PhD in Germany, because I am a German citizen. I was born there. My brother lives there. Half of my family lives there. My boyfriend, whom I met my summer abroad, also lives there. And I've always had a really strong connection to Germany. I have gone for many summers. It has a very big part of my heart. And so I thought to myself, well, if I could see my future being in Germany and wanting to live there and wanting to work there, then perhaps I shouldn't just be thinking about the summers of summer vacation fun that I had there, and actually work and see what working in a lab and working in that environment would be like. And so one of the main things that I wanted to really look for when I was looking for an internship was somebody who was willing to really have a focus also on mentorship. And so I did a lot of cold emailing, a little scary, but worthwhile. And I found Professor Hoffmann-Röder, and on her website, what really caught my eye was that she had a section on her page that said, the mentoring program within the framework of LMU aims to provide career support for highly qualified emerging female academics working towards professorship. And although I don't want to be a professor, I had the chemistry department at Hopkins is not as kind to women as one would hope they would be. And so I was also looking for somebody who was going to really foster a woman in science, because I thought there's not that many professors in the chemistry department that do synthesis that are also women. And so, yes, the LMU is the Ludwig-Maximilian Universität. So what I did that summer, like Bridget had mentioned, being there for only a few weeks. Now, I was there from June until August, but that's still not enough time to really go through a whole synthesis yourself or have your own project. So I worked also with a mentor, and my skill that I really got to hone was working with like polysaccharides and doing carbohydrate chemistry, which is pretty difficult in terms of doing glycosylations and having all of it be purified. It's a lot of columns, good stuff. But as I was there, what was really cool was that, as Bridget had also mentioned, in conversational German, and I also took some German classes with Frau Wieler, hello, that you don't really learn how to say round bottom flasks or an Erlenmeyer flask or any of these chemical reagents and stuff like that. And so if I wanted to pursue a PhD in Germany, although yes, a lot of it is in English, lab work and just sort of talking back and forth is often in German in that lab. And so what I found really worthwhile was I got to learn a lot of those German words in my notebook. Actually, I would write all my procedures in English, and then I would write them all in German. And so my notebook ended up being sort of a way for me to practice learning these specific German words. What I also found wonderful is that, as it mentioned in the little caption for what I did over the summer, the lab that I was working for had a really great relationship with the Max Planck Institute for Biochemistry, which was across the street. And what was really cool is that one of the graduate students working there had a really great relationship with the lab in the institute. And he was talking to me about how wonderful it was that his project not only was in, the Ludwig-Maximilian Universität, but he also was able to form connections with people in the Max Planck Institute and, further his career ideas after his PhD. And so that was very cool. What was also very cool is, I don't know how many of you know about Southern German breakfasts or lunch, but Weißwurst and Brezen are a big part of that. And one of the cool things was that on every Wednesday, we would, other people in the lab who were in my same room with me, they'd go to different places and get different Weißwurst, and we'd try different Weißwursts in the area, and I'd bring pretzels, and we'd have, a great time talking to one another. And so I think that in terms of, learning about German culture, which I had always been a part of, this sort of really broadened my view of what a future in Germany could really look like. And at the end of the summer, something that was really exciting to me was that the professor, she said, you know, if you want to pursue your PhD in my lab, you would be more than welcome to do so. And so now I am finishing my master's. Coronavirus has me in some kind of way trying to finish it. But once it is done, the application process for PhDs in Germany is you have to have a professor who's willing to sponsor you, and you have to have an idea of what thesis work you want to do. And you need to have a master's degree already if you want to go right into the PhD. And so Hopkins offers a one-year master's program for the chemistry department. And then after that, I am planning on going back to the Ludwig-Maximilian Universität to pursue my PhD, which I'm very excited about. And so I think that this opportunity was one of the best things that could have happened to me. And it also propelled me to find confidence within myself. Once I came back to Hopkins, I actually changed labs. I thought that my previous professor wasn't giving me the kind of support I needed, and that I had now had this wonderful research experience with someone who was willing to support me and was willing to talk to me about, you know, the trials and tribulations of being a woman in science, and, you know, what it really means to have support. And so with newfound confidence, I left my first lab and I joined another lab. And so I was very excited. And my advisor, who also had similar comments to make about, oh, I don't know if that's the best thing for your career, I came back going, oh, really? I now have a position if I want one in graduate school. So I think it worked out great. But it also gave me the ability to sort of stand up for myself and find myself. And in terms of housing, I lived with my brother. Bless his heart, if we're going to be honest. However, there's a Facebook page that I'm a part of. So if anybody is interested in doing an internship in Munich, it's called WG und Wohnung München gesucht. And what happens on that page is that people will list, you have to, someone in the group has to invite you in. But so please just email me. Anybody can, you know, get my email. But every day I get around like 4 or 5 people who are saying, hey, I'm not going to be here for the summer. Does somebody want to take over my sublet? You know, they give you the prices and where they are. And this was also a way, you know, I got this through some friends of my brother's. And so I think that one of the also really cool things about being in Germany for an extended amount of time is you also get job connections, but you also get you know, friendship connections that will help you find housing and will help you find, you know, where to go for, you know, when Germany loses out of the first round in the World Cup on your birthday. But, you know, a lot of good things I think really came from this whole opportunity. And I will write the Facebook name in the chat right now. So if you have any other questions, comments, concerns,
I want to do an internship in Germany now. You folks are inspiring me. I did want to ask you, since you obviously have this, you know, family connection to Germany, but it sounds like you really were able to go out on your own in this experience when you with your internship.
Yeah. So what I really enjoyed also was that I was able to travel a lot. One of the things that I had done in a previous summer is I had a Eurorail pass, which is also a really great way to get to know Europe if you're there for a certain amount of time and if you can afford it. I had also gotten another scholarship, which allowed me to stay for the whole summer. But my brother's a bit of a homebody, and so it was actually funny. A lot of the places that I ended up going, I introduced him to in Munich. So there's a lot of autonomy that comes in Germany. And I think that that's one of the things that I really appreciate about being there. In Baltimore, public transportation is a little bit more difficult in getting out and doing all these things. But in Germany, there is really, you know, the trains are great, the buses are okay, but there's a lot of ways to get out and explore. And another great thing is working in lab, they're very concrete on their hours. And so Hopkins, there's a culture of staying for, you know, far longer, but Germans like to work to live so you can do stuff afterwards. And so that was really cool. So they were very, strict with me, saying, go home, go do something else, go explore Munich, do something fun, tell us about it afterwards. We have wonderful suggestions if you have any questions. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Why don't we move on then, if you don't mind sticking around at the meeting for a few moments. Thank you so much. We have one more a presenter and then a few other bits of information that we wanted to share with everybody, and then to open the floor again. So Deborah, if you could introduce the next.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Caroline West. She already introduced herself a little bit. She graduated, she's not able to go to commencement. I'm sure that's a bit of a disappointment. She graduated a semester early with a major in sociology. And I believe you started in international studies. Is that correct? You can tell us a little bit about that. Caroline completed the advanced German sequence with us before she went on her adventure in Berlin that she's going to tell us about, where she did independent research on recent refugees and the museum scene. So, Caroline?
Yes, hi, thank you for the introduction. So I actually double majored in both sociology and international studies, which provided some useful background for the research that I ended up pursuing. And basically, I want to be as brief as possible. I'm mindful of the time, but kind of basically what I was looking at was a particular initiative that was started a couple of years ago in Berlin, and it's kind of a joint collaboration with a few different prominent museums in Berlin. So the Museum of Islamic Art, the Byzantine Art Museum, the Near East Museum, and it's called the Multaka Project, the Multaka Project. Multaka is a word in Arabic that means meeting point. And so this is kind of one of the many initiatives that was started back in 2015 and 2016 that had to do with kind of welcoming refugees and trying to promote their cultural and social integration in Germany. But kind of what attracted me to this particular project is that their kind of method of integration is a little bit unique. So rather than kind of focusing on maybe the humanitarian side of things, what they were specifically doing was taking refugees primarily from Syria and also some refugees from Iraq, and they were training them as tour guides to work in these museums, because often, they themselves share a homeland with the art that is featured in those museums. And the idea is that they sort of develop these very special tours that links back to, their own culture and their own expertise in the history of their homelands. So I was conducting interviews with those tour guides. And then I also had kind of a side question that I was interested in. I wanted to know how that initiative had been impacted by the rise of far right-wing populism in Germany. So kind of alongside the focus that has come up recently with refugees, a lot of people have also been looking to kind of a growing trend of right-wing populism, not just in Germany, but across Europe. And so I was interested in kind of exploring that angle as well, and finding out kind of what success they have had in promoting integration in that sort of fraught political context. So that was kind of my focus. I was doing interviews with tour guides. In my case, it was really essential, I would say, to have knowledge of the German language, because a lot of the refugees that I spoke with were more comfortable speaking to me in German than they were speaking to me in English. And I don't have any knowledge of Arabic, unfortunately. So my choices were either German or English, and often they chose German. So it was incredibly useful and essential to have knowledge of German. I think one thing that's a little bit different about doing independent research, maybe something that makes it different from doing an internship or working in a lab, is that it can be a little bit lonely. So you're kind of there by yourself. In many ways, you are sort of working alone to figure out the direction of your research. So I was really fortunate to have a mentor back in the United States. I was working with a sociology professor at Hopkins, Alil Benjamin, who has expertise in humanitarian aid and in refugees, and she was immensely helpful. She spoke to me on video chat and on the phone while I was in Germany, and sort of helps to boost my confidence and speak with me about kind of future directions. But especially with the kind of research that I was doing, often I found myself kind of having to change my methodology on the ground, or not necessarily the methodology, but to go in sort of new and spontaneous directions. And it can be a little bit intimidating when you're there alone trying to make those decisions just yourself. And And as an independent researcher, often you kind of have to be an outsider in the community where you're doing research, because to become sort of a friend of the people that you're trying to do research on, you are maybe kind of complicating the ethics of that. So it is, I think, a little bit different from being part of a lab or doing some kind of internship, but I had a really wonderful experience there. I had the chance to speak with really incredible people that offered kind of new insights on their experience in Germany, and I also was able to travel a little bit and see parts of Berlin that I hadn't seen. So yeah, I had a great experience and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Caroline. I think that was a very brave project that you embarked on, and really turned out well.
I wanted to ask both Caroline and Audrey, since the two of you are not heritage speakers of German, and you I'm assuming you didn't spend your high school years or your primary school years in Germany. Could you maybe just say briefly about how it is that you even first started German? Was this something that you learned in high school and then continued at Hopkins? I'm just curious about your trajectory, since obviously it's made a huge difference in both of your life choices.
I can go first, if that's all right. Or... Cool. So I started in German in middle school. It was mostly accidental. My brother was the year ahead of me. He took German. I was then forced to take German. I ended up liking it a lot. And, you know, I just continued it through high school, took AP German, applied to Hopkins as a German major. I added IS later when I realized there was a dual major track. And I just kept up with it in terms of I kept taking, you know, the German language courses here, which are great, and the upper level German courses. Also, you know, sort of the general dabbling in listening to German music, attempting to watch Tatort. What did we used to call it? The German speaking hour with the German club. I believe on mute.
Stammtisch.
Stammtisch. There we go. Stammtisch. So I didn't have any heritage speaking or anything like that at all. I think, you know, I had a relatively ordinary to somewhat passionate level of commitment to it in university, which was very good. But it's not like I used to get intimidated when I would see like this as an undergrad. So I would think, oh, this person must have really been obsessed. You know, I think I had a pretty ordinary level of commitment to it. I think I got really good, you know, returns out of it. And I was able to be pretty successful in the summer there. You know, it's a little bit stressful when it's not your first language, but you get through it. You have like some awkward moments, and then people just kind of realize that you're not from there, and they're merciful. So yeah, you definitely don't have to be, you know, a heritage speaker or have lived there for any amount of time. If you, you know, I think when you get there, my experience was that my German was better than I thought it was going to be. When I got there, I thought I would be more stuttering and awkward and confused, and I actually rolled into it pretty quickly.
And just to add to that, so I came to German in a slightly different and perhaps kind of unusual way. So my dad, who is American, is actually a translator, and he is fluent in a variety of different languages, German being one of them. And so from a very young age, actually, I was introduced to German. And so that sort of gave me, I think, an advantage because I was able to come at it not necessarily as a native speaker would, but at least kind of with the advantage of youth. So I think that certainly helped me, at least with getting rid of the American accent, I think, a little bit, because I started when I was so little. But I think it is obviously intimidating to go when you're not a native speaker, but I generally found that kind of when you make the effort, that people are kind and encouraging, and but I think it is really, really critical to try and take German courses at Hopkins. I think that is so important, or even just to study a language at all. I think maybe that's something that we're sort of, we don't appreciate that as much maybe as we used to, but I had wonderful experiences at Hopkins in all the languages that I studied, and especially the German department. The advanced German courses that I took were really valuable in preparing me to do the research that I did. So.
We can also send you a brochure about the various courses that we offer in the German program. We have the full panorama of language courses from beginning to advanced, as well as a series of upper level courses that are taught both in English and in German. So if you say want to know something about Friedrich Nietzsche, there's always going to be a course where you could read some of his work. If there's something you want to know about German pop culture, that's a big part of the language curriculum. So there are many different ways in which you can get involved. We also have film screenings, and now I know from chat here that even over the summer there's going to be Stammtisch.
Here's a question that came through. Is there anything you wish you knew before working abroad? Does anyone want to take that question?
I think one thing that can be really valuable is just to have somebody, especially if you're going alone, just to have somebody that can sort of check in on you, whether that's someone that's actually physically there in the country with you or someone who's back home in the United States. I think it can just be really good to have kind of a point of contact, especially if you're making sort of having to make kind of spontaneous decisions for yourself, or decide what to do next. It can be good to kind of have somebody to collaborate with, even if they're not there with you.
I would say I think it's important, one, to probably somewhat know how to cook. I think that's helpful. But I think you learn German food I love, but I think that living in a different country, Caroline's, I think, said it very well, that it's a different kind of personal responsibility. And so when you go, I think it's important that you recognize that you're going to be challenged in ways about how to live independently that you aren't in the United States. I think college in the States, there's a lot of safety nets for, if you want to go swimming, you can just go to the rec center. If you want to do, in Germany, everything is sort of, you want to go swimming, you go to the Schwimmbad. Like, you have to have you need to find those places, you need to do the research, and have that sort of go get 'em attitude, because if not, then you end up, I think, missing out on a lot of the opportunities because nobody's standing on the corner with flyers in the same way like in New York City.
I would also say, at least in my experience, I'm not sure how it is in labs, I've never been in one of those. In my experience working as an intern with this Chamber of Commerce, I was unpaid, and they told me in like 20 different ways that they were fine with me coming in a little bit later in the day if I had something I wanted to do, leaving earlier to go explore, doing this, doing that. And I think I put it a lot on myself to be there on time every day, sitting there, not take too long at lunch, whatever. Especially as someone who's now in the working world and, also has interns that work at my work, it didn't really make sense for me to do that. I wish I'd known. I think I had it in my head that it would just be like not right to do so, and I was having trouble picking up on the nuances. But no, they genuinely meant it. They were like, go have some fun in your life. So I think, I wish I'd known beforehand that even though Germans that they're very direct, like they mean it if they say it. They're not just really being nice about it. And so I don't know if it's as much about working. I think it's partially working abroad where I felt very sort of off kilter to begin with, and then partially like a lack of work experience. But, if you have things you're interested in doing, even if they're just, fun things, not particularly educational in any way, definitely, read the room, ask about it, and see if you can get some extra time, come in later, leave a little earlier to go have an experience. I mean, you're abroad, you might not get to go back later, and you can have a really, really fun time. looking back, I wish I'd spent more time wandering around, Alexanderplatz in the morning and enjoying myself as opposed to running. So that would be my advice, read the room, relax a little, take advantage of the fact that you're there.
Great. We have a few more slides prepared about other ways of funding your summer stay in Germany that maybe we could put up.
Right. So if you are in engineering, you may already know about this Ladenburg travel fund. And I took this right from the engineering website. And a lot of students go to a German-speaking country. And I think this funds the engineering students very well for a summer abroad. But you can check out the engineering site for that. I have information about the Max Kade fellowships. Let's see. Let me come to, not this one, but our departmental website. Here we go. You can see that? So this is our departmental website, and we have our courses listed if you're interested in the fall courses, but you can come to our German page. Right, it's taking a little time to load. Here we go. And it gives you a little bit of information about, there we go. A little information about courses. We have this information on our website about study and internships abroad. And we have a link as well to summer programs. I'm working on a new blog that will feature some of the information in one of the next slides. But the study, oh, it's the Max Kade.
All the way at the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, here we go. The Max Kade Center, these are the funds we have for our travel grants, and so you can find information here to apply for. The application form is linked on this page. Obviously, this was for March 24th, 2020, and because of COVID, it didn't happen this year, but certainly we hope it will happen next year. So this information is on our website. The other website is this DAAD Rise page, and I think Patrick already linked to this in the chat room, but you can go here and read a lot about funding and support for different fields for research internships in Germany, internships with German companies, and so on. Let's see, we come back to this page. Wait a minute. Here we go. Can you see the JHU funding resources? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Good. So as you know, if you've started to try to look for your own, if you've started to try to find where all the information is in one place at Johns Hopkins, it's hard to find. So I've put together this list, and I'll continue updating it, but I can also turn this into a PDF and make sure that I can email it to anybody participating here. But these are all really good options right here at Johns Hopkins from different offices. Some are in international studies, some are in engineering, the second one. Some are through the Second Decade Society. The Homewood Student Affairs Fellowship Program has a lot of information. And of course, our own Study Abroad office has information about scholarships, and they do have a specific category for internships as well. So all of these links will take you to funding that's available on the Johns Hopkins campus. We can keep you informed if you want to follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. It's German at Hopkins. For the Instagram site, that's the @ spelled out with underscores in between the words. And for the Facebook page, it's German with the @ as you see it here. So there you'll see information about Stammtisch if you want to meet and speak in German. And I don't know, we're kind of just getting started with all of our Instagram messaging information too, but let us know what kind of information you're interested in finding, and we will try to provide it to you.
And on that note, are there any questions or even maybe just informational items you want us to know about, what you're interested in that we should be thinking about this summer, areas that you would like an internship in? We're always willing to bounce ideas. I know that on the flyer for the meeting, our email addresses were given, and we can certainly contact you again if you have specific questions about where might be an appropriate place for someone with this background to do an internship, for instance, and how to begin. And I'm really grateful to our three presenters, not only that you made yourselves available today, but that you and shared your really fantastic experiences, including how you went about finding your internship, but that you've also agreed to make yourself available if people have questions moving forward. It really is a good time now to start thinking about what you could be doing in summer 2021. I recognize it's frustrating to be homebound this summer, but next summer you likely will not be. So it pays to begin to think about what kinds of internships you would want to do. And again, feel free to contact us if you want to bounce ideas off us, or if you want us maybe to give you pointers of different kinds of institutions you might be able to think about. I know it's a busy time of year for all of you, and this has been an hour-long meeting, so thank you so much for turning out. Do be in touch, and think about, if there are different ways in which you want to keep in touch with the German program, then in the fall for film evenings, music evenings, if you can't fit in a course, that would be terrific. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.